Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Breakthrough. Today, I have the privilege of speaking to Neal Bendesky, otherwise known as 199 Guy, for losing over 199 pounds. He has one of the most incredible weight loss and just lifestyle transformation stories that I've ever heard, and I can't wait for him to share his story with all of you. So, Neal, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Other than my Huey the Pug dog yelling in the background, I'm wonderful and I'm very honored to be on your show. And thank you for that introduction.
Well, it's a pleasure to speak with you. And I was hoping that you could just start from the beginning, take us back to 2014. You were 57 years old, 450 pounds, working as a marketing executive. And you describe it in your book as having one foot in the grave at that point of your life.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Rob, when it comes down to it, I was a prisoner of my job. What was my job? Well, my job was to work for either an event or a sports team. In this case, back in 2014, I was at St. Louis University. Prior to that, I was in 2013, 2012 at the University of South Dakota. So I'm a sports marketing person that has a background, and my main priority was to sell corporate partnerships, right? So I was also in South Florida for over 23 years. So my evolution, as far as my background was, I started at the bottom, man. I was an equipment manager at the University of Cincinnati. So I cleaned uniforms for my scholarship. And then I proceeded to get my master's in sports administration. And then I went to what was the Olympic Training Center. And that's where I met my wife. And that's my gold medal, right? Over 40 years, Laura. And in saying such, I ended up moving forward with, these opportunities. So my first opportunity, Rob, was with the Houston Gamblers. So a lot of time is being spent. Like I'm sure many of our listeners can relate to this. You first just getting started. I call that in my book, in the CEO Cornerstones, I talk about you're the CEO of your life.
Mhm.
Then you're the CEO of your community. And we'll get more in depth to this later. But the point is, you get entrenched into that community. In this case, it was Houston, Texas. I was able to promote the Houston Gamblers. Jim Kelly, the Hall of Fame quarterback, was our quarterback. We had some great players, and it was a startup league. So it was a real positive situation for us. As it played through, unfortunately, we became the $3 league. So our now 47th president in the United States, Donald Trump, actually was an owner of a team, and he had a vision. And I moved from Houston to New Jersey to later find out that an antitrust suit is only worth $1 times three. That's not going to pay many bills, right? So here I am putting all this together. My job, Rob, is challenging. I end up going back to my alma mater, the University of Cincinnati, and I started corporate partnerships. We're kind of pioneers in the packaging of the way programs are done. And then I actually went to South Florida for over 23 years. That was a great run. University of Miami, the baseball team, the Florida Marlins. I ended up working for the Miami Heat as vice president of the Miami Heat. And then I had my own company. Unfortunately, as I'm sitting in an office, the pounds are starting to go on. And I'm also not understanding what I've seen a lot of your great podcasts before, where you really break it down to what a transformation is. This is not to talk about a diet. This is to talk about a transformation. That's what I did. So are in South Florida, and all of a sudden we're the victims of identity theft. You can't get any lower than that. We have two boys, and what are we going to do? So one of my friends, who's now the athletic director at Boston College, at the time he was at the University of Miami, he said, Neal, the only way you're going to get back in the game is to get in the game. So I took a gig at the University of South Dakota, half my salary, but the people around me helped me build a foundation. And that's one of the things that we should also talk about is you need support. You need a foundation in order to grow yourself. So I'm there and I start saying, man, I'm just going to start walking. So it was kind of interesting. Vermillion, South Dakota, it's not a big town. It seemed like I could go from one end to the other and be done with my workout, right? And as it played through, I'd always see the football coaches, go get him, Joe Glenn. And it was fantastic. At the end of the day, I wasn't really accomplishing my goals. And then I ended up going to SLU, and I was St. Louis University, and I'm a senior associate AD. I'm working my way back up the ladder, but the pounds are still going on. And what am I going to do? So I got motivated, which is really a step one in the process that I talk about in our book, Never Too Late. I got motivated and I started walking around my son's high school track. I did it for every day, and I lost 35 pounds. So I went from over 450 to about 413, 414. And I'm like feeling good, feeling better. I think on another one of your podcasts, when you're talking about James Clear's book about just getting out and feeling energized by the exercise. I did, but it wasn't really coming together for me. So a big thing in a long answer is, Rob, I was coming here to work for the indoor football team called the Arizona Rattlers. It was my job to get sponsorships. So I go out and get sponsorships, and I get one from Orange Theory Fitness. You've heard of Orange Theory, right? In
Yep, I
Canada,
have. Hmm.
right? Right? They're all over the world. There's over, I think, 1,500 locations now. Anyway, make a long story short, for the first 5 or 6 weeks, I was failing. I didn't understand. I'm showing up, I'm exercising. Many of us hear that equation and go out and get to the gym, right? New Year's resolutions around the corner, right? One day, October 12th, 2015, I'm wearing a 5X top, and a little boy says to me, "Are you Santa Claus?" My first reaction, Rob, wasn't PG-13. I went, ho, ho, ho. And I went to the trainer, Kyle Settles, and I said, "What do I have to do?" And he taught me the value of nutrition, which is 80% of the equation. So to answer in a long way, my history is I worked hard in sponsorships. I put on events. I did in-game entertainment. I did sponsorships. I did promotions in the community, and it just added up into my system. And all of a sudden, the light went on, the pivot point went on. And actually, I mentioned when we talked about this before we got on the air, my son, Justin, our oldest son, who's now in the doctorate program at NYU, he helped me a lot because, again, in the book, we talk about hearing versus listening, right? I heard, but I didn't listen, right? So Justin's working at Jet's Pizza. Dude, I like pizza. I'm sure a lot of people out there
Who
like pizza,
doesn't?
right? Right? So I used to go there and I would get 2 slices, and then I would kind of hide behind and get my third one, right? Justin walks out. It was a spring day, in St. Louis. It wasn't cold like some of the other days, and, like in Montreal. And big picture is, he said to me, and he has a salad in his hand, and he said, "Dad, I think it's time for a salad." And I kind of realized that others were noticing, and others that love me were noticing. And I think it was really important to move forward. So that's kind of my evolution to the point of where you're at. We'll go into the other stages of my life, as we get into this podcast.
Yeah, because much more has happened to you than just the weight loss journey. But I want to dig into that a little bit more. So you mentioned that nutrition is 80% of it and exercise is only 20%. What have you learned about nutrition through losing all of the weight, and as well as what you've learned about exercise? Because also it's also fundamental, but nutrition is really the cornerstone of it all, right?
100%. I mean, it's an 80-20 combination. So, when you put it in perspective, Rob, um, what didn't I do? And if you're out there listening, understand that we're not here, Rob and I, to talk about a diet. We're talking about a transformation of your lifestyle. And so when people call me, just like in my situation, "What did you do?" Right? You just asked me the question, "What did you do?" So I started learning first about moderation. So instead of having 3 slices of pizza, I had two. Okay. That was part of the process. Then somebody turned me on to an app. There's plenty of them out there called MyFitnessPal. What's that? Okay. So I started understanding what my proteins, my carbs, and my fats were. So I set a goal for myself based on those particular scenarios. So I learned nutrition basically through an app through an opportunity of people educating me. And at the time, because I was really, like you say, 1 foot in the grave. You know, I wasn't living. Rob, I wasn't living. Here I am, a guy promoting sports, some of the best athletes in the world. You know, I've worked with them all. Okay. But the bigger picture is that I wasn't living the part. And I was not feeling, I couldn't even walk around the block, right? So it was a real struggle, you know, with all my circulation issues. All of this was adding up. So I also felt like here I am, a communicator. I have fun when I do that. But the bigger picture is if I had a stroke, maybe I wouldn't be able to speak again. So I started thinking about all these things and I put a clock in. So I call it my wellness clock. So my wellness clock was ticking. And before it got to 0.00, like on a game clock, I felt like it was time to start understanding. So what did I do? I kind of looked at, there's a pre-event scenario, you know, when you go in and you train, and then your breakfast, and then your lunch, and then your dinner. What was the window of time that I was going to eat that? You know, a lot of times, you know, in some of the values that I've learned, you know, eating before 8 o'clock, you know, if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s years old, when you get to my age, I'm 66. When you get to my age, you know, it gets a little bit different, even earlier, you know, in terms of wanting to control your consumption and watch your numbers. So I would usually do between 1,600 and 2,000 calories a day. I would do anywhere between 140 and 170 protein grams. I would do anywhere from 120 to 140 carbohydrates and somewhere between 50 and 75 fats. I took on this supplement that I felt like it was fate. Okay. So here I am, I come here, and this sponsor that became a partner of the Arizona Rattlers, Orange Theory Fitness, great ownership, you know, great support group. All of a sudden, this is less than 3 miles to my house. Fate number one. I talk about this in my book. Fate number two is there's a supplement, worldwide supplement group, and there's plenty out there. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but in this case, it was too close. It was less, the headquarters for Isogenics was 3 miles from my house. So that was another fate. So, and then the situation that happened with the little 3-year-old boy when he says to me, "You Santa Claus," right? You know, all of a sudden these things started lining up where I started building momentum. And I think that's really important, Rob, you know, when somebody's out there saying, you know, how do I become, I like you said this recently, you know, vulnerable. How do I become where I'm honest with myself, with what really has happened to me, you know? And here I am, 57 years young, right? And at that point in my life, and a lot of people think, in addition to the things that we've discussed, that a sports movie encouraged me. Now, there was a sports movie, Rob, that was involved in this journey. And listen, I'm telling my story now, but I hope people out there realize that part of this process is on not only just on the people around you, but on you. And when you're ready, you do it. Okay. Well, I was ready. I had my wellness clock ticking. I said that, but I saw this movie that Jeff Bridges, the American actor, won an Oscar for, and it was called Crazy Heart. Now, I'm going to give you the correlation. He was 57. I was 57. He was a alcoholic. You know, he drank a lot. I was a binge eater. Okay. Can anybody relate out there? Right. Okay. He wrote a song that in the movie Colin Farrell performed called Crazy Heart. I wrote a plan. He was a warm-up for Colin and his band in Phoenix. Where do I live? Phoenix, right? So the stars started to align, you know, in a real positive way. And I never forgot this. that he went to go get his royalty check at Rob, and he says to his trainer, "I told you there's still gas in the tank." And see, that's kind of my mantra in the beginning. I did that. And then there was a movie, baseball movie called Mr. 3000. Have you ever seen that baseball movie?
I haven't, no.
Okay. So there's an actor, his name is Bernie Williams, and he's very funny. He's passed, unfortunately, but he portrayed a baseball player for the Minnesota Twins, and he believed that he had to have 3,000 hits to get into the Hall of Fame, right? So bottom line is that the baseball statisticians called him 10 years after he retired and said, "We're taking 3 of your hits." Hello, what's about that? So he ends up in a publicity stunt, fictitiously, playing in this movie and getting 2 hits. And the last at bat, which could have got him his 3,000th, he decided to bunt that got the current star player from second base to score the winning run. And here he is at 2,999. He got in the Hall of Fame. He changed his mindset. He became somebody that included other people because he didn't try to do, before that, he was so into himself. I'm sure people can relate to that. But bigger picture is, I didn't have 299 pounds to lose. I took that number. So I had just seen this seminar in St. Louis prior to coming here to Arizona by a very good author, Rob, by the name of Bob Bodine. He wrote a book called The Power of Who. And in that book, I put it in my windshield, in my car, my dashboard, because it said, "I'm not going to hire people," he's a professional recruiter, "unless you're healthy." I wasn't healthy. So it served as motivation. So I don't know what overcame me, but again, the movie, Crazy Heart, all these things are aligning. I'm here in, Arizona. I told you the fate things that had happened. I called up Bob and I said, "Bob, I'm going to lose 199 pounds and you're going to be my agent." And sure enough, later in my journey, when I'd reached that level or close to it, I was in Austin, Texas for a wedding. Bob's in Dallas. I drove to his country club. He's not my agent, but he's became my brother. And I'm very appreciative of him and what he does.
That's amazing. What was the hardest part about your weight loss journey? And did you ever feel like you were tempted to give up at any point?
Well, I have a saying, actually, one of my friends from the baseball world, Carlos Ledesma, shared this with me. If you quit, you don't have a chance, right? And, with so many people starting to think right now, do I start now, right? Because that was part of, what I've said earlier, my wellness clock was ticking. Everybody has a different reason. Listeners, I'm very cognizant of that. But there's also this New Year's resolution coming up, right? And do you know that during the holidays, the average person gains 15 pounds?
Wow.
So then you go and you say to yourself, I'm going to go to the gym, right? I'm going to go to the gym after the new year. So you get that part of your life engaged. And then what happens is you end up saying to yourself, all right, do you know that 80% of the people within the first 2 weeks don't make it past the second week? So you've gained your 15 pounds and you basically had this resolution that you didn't finalize. So I was in a space where I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed. When I went to Orange Theory, it was, I told you, my pivot point, October 12th, 2015. They had a weight loss challenge. And they had an awards ceremony with the local studios. A lot of these people that own these Orange Theories are franchise owners. So one's in the area. They had this little gathering together, Rob. And I had lost at that point 66 pounds. But I was embarrassed to tell people my starting weight of 415.6. I was embarrassed. And so, I went to my trainer, Kyle Settles again. And I said, I really won that. The guy that you announced at 33 pounds. And I go, but he goes, "Neal, you have to own up to, where you are." and in order to move forward. So that's advice. That was a point where I said, wait a minute, am I going to continue this? Because at that point, if you really put the math together, I lost 35 pounds in St. Louis. My Orange Theory weight was 415.6, and they monitored that. And I was 66 pounds down. So I'm still a big dude, over 300 pounds, right? And they have what they call now, they renamed it a transformation challenge. That's pretty good. So they didn't have it as organized in terms of how you win. So my studio, South Chandler, Arizona, has this contest like the other studios did. And two newbies came in. I told Kyle, I'm going to lose 40 pounds, 42 pounds in 40 days, because that was the challenge, okay? Or 40 to 42, the other way around. So, because it's been a long time since I did that. I did. Dude, I did. And I finished third in my studio because two newbies came in and they just had, great weight loss. But at the end of proportionally, not the
Mhm.
number of pounds that I lost, because again, I'm still a big dude and I had a lot to go. But there are times when you then get your goals. You've been motivated. I've told you that, right? I think I've established that. Then the next step to lifestyle success, as I talk about in my book, Never Too Late, is accountability. Yeah, I'm using my Fitness Pal, but how much do I want this to achieve? I'm curious. When you got motivated by your brother-in-law and you ran that half marathon in October, okay, what did you realize that you had to do in order to get to the next step?
It was a question of discipline. So, training enough that I would be able to get through it. And it was also to prove to myself that I was able to do it, because I believed that I could. And so those were kind of the two things. And then also to be, I guess, in a secondary sense, I spoke with you about this a little bit, on a previous call. Our kids can be motivators for us. We want to be a good example for them, and we want to show them the right way, and show them that we're able to achieve things, and set a good example. So I think that was also somewhat of a motivator, and something that inspires me now that I have children, to kind of push myself a little harder to kind of be a good example in that sense.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about family, right?
Mhm.
Because there are times when you wake up and you don't want to go to that workout. It's like in my book, I say, as you're getting started, the do words versus the can't words, right? It's an investment, or you could say it's too expensive. It's a priority. I'm too busy. Modifications. I'm embarrassed. I was embarrassed. I said that. Okay. You move forward. I'm not ready. Gyms have daycare. I have kids. Energy boost. When you have a workout, when you were doing your training, right? You're energized. You said
Mhm.
that in one of your other podcasts when you're talking about James Clear. I'm tired. That's not, you're tired because you're sitting on your couch. I went from the couch to the concrete. So did you. Okay. Action yields results versus I'll start on Monday, right? So these can and can't words that we all know about, okay, is what sometimes keeps us and stops us from going to that next level. So the evolution of my story is that, so in 2016, things are starting to happen real positive. I'm like at 187 pounds lost in Orange Theory terms, over 200 pounds total. My total weight loss at one point was 251, and it was fantastic, right? At the end of the day, okay, I had a hospital come to me and say, and this is really important for people starting to get accountable, okay? Because people say to me, a life threatening event. Well, Rob, I had one, okay? So in July, I met with a nutritionist, and I'm listening, but you got to consider, do it within your framework. Do it You got to know your body. You got to know what you're comfortable with. If you're lactose intolerant, don't eat milk. Okay. Or if you like my nephew Dylan, who plays baseball in college baseball, said to me, you can't have a shake, milk related product, before you do a workout because it slows you down. So it's like you got to start to learn the accountabilities and the things that you do, because every day is a challenge, right? And I love that challenge, because one of my mantras is show up and do the work and be consistent. And that's kind of what I did. I've done over 2,727 Orange Theory classes in a little over 9 years. So if you do the math, that's over 300 classes a year. So, you got to show up and do the work. And whatever that may be, it doesn't have to be Orange Theory. It could be any gym that makes a difference for you. Anyway, my point is that as I'm progressing in 2016, I meet with this nutritionist. She decides to tell me to be organic, to be clean. Well, I had an hereditary thing in my system. I didn't know it. That was ticking. It was like the Titanic. All of a sudden, after a TV interview with a local Fox station, I'm sitting on the bench at Orange Theory after, again, this interview wasn't necessarily a big workout. I fell face forward and I died. I had sudden cardiac death. Chapter 1 in my book say the day I died. I did. I stopped breathing. Okay. They turned me over. They got the defibrillator. I am a rare case. I had the Widowmaker. Less than 50% of the people live through that. Less than 10% come out on their own. I did both. Now, other than some broken ribs, that were part of the process, on August 2nd, 2016 is when that happened. The next day, I had 2 stents put in. 9 days later, Rob, I was back in the gym.
Oh my goodness.
So the big picture is, oh, by the way, the Rattlers had a playoff game, and I borrowed a wheelchair from somebody, and one of my friends, Adam Turner, he carted me around so I could at least show up and do my job, because I was entertaining these partners, potential partners, I should say. And, I'm motivated in many ways, right? And some people might think I'm crazy. I was comfortable because I had prepared for that life-threatening event. And that is, where the scenario is in terms of that. So 2016, I say, wait a minute. I'm really thin, not right like I am right now, because again, I'll tell you my story about my hormonal shot and my cancer that I just beat. But the bigger picture is I had never run before, like you, right? And I got motivated, and sure enough, I found a friend of mine now who was the ambassador for Orange Theory. Dude, I'm competitive, okay? Within my own self, okay? Not next to the next person as much, but once in a while, somebody gets in my mind. So I say, I want to be the ambassador of the year for Orange Theory Fitness. So why not go where the Orange Theory ambassador is in 2017? And his name was Ben Brown. He's in Montgomery, Alabama. That ain't close. I got in my truck and I drove because there was a half marathon there. So I wanted to go there in Montgomery. It ends in the minor league baseball stadium in downtown Montgomery. And I had run my first half marathon under 3 hours. So I was pretty stoked about that, right? And then, I got as an ambassador for the Rock and Roll Running Series, and that was fun. And I've done 35 races since my heart attack, 17 half marathons. Oh, by the way, like you might want to do for a cause sometimes because of your 2 kids. So what happened to me? I had a heart attack, right? I wanted to energize people out there that there is that possibility. It's never too late. It is that possibility, like in the Mr. 3000 became 2,999. My initial mantra was never be satisfied. Why didn't you say you lost 200 pounds? No, I lost 199 pounds because I never really wanted to be satisfied, because that's part of, the psyche in moving forward every day. Anyway, so I go to these races, and what they're about, right? What was it like for you when you were in the corral for the first time?
There was such great energy. Everybody was amped up and everybody was felt like they were supporting each other and ready to go. And it was like a great big community feeling.
Yeah, but how tight, like in that corral, right?
Yeah, it was
And
crowded.
yeah, and you can't really stretch, and although you learn some dynamic stretches, like I started. Oh, okay. So I didn't have any knee issues until 2019. So here I am, the big dude, but I had to learn better posture. So I went to a local physical therapy place, Spooner Physical Therapy, where my wife Laura now works, actually. But there's over 20 locations here in the Valley. That's what the Phoenix area is called. Anyway, so I end up starting to realize that I needed to sit up. I needed in your chair, like if some of you people out there say, listen, I'm not going to lose 199 pounds. God love you. But maybe you lose 20, 30. Learn that your posture and how you get out of your chair, and not with the front of your feet, but with the back of your feet. And then for me, how many of you, and maybe you have heard about chi running?
Nope. Well, except
CAT,
for in your
Chi
book.
time. Yeah, yeah. And in that particular scenario, I ran in again. This is all faith. A coach, Lisa Pizzoni, and she had learned from this gentleman in Massachusetts this form of running where it's wrist to rib. It's not extending out like that, and it's not extending where you expose your joints more. So it's more a strike point is the middle to the back of your foot. So I used that technique, and I had fun. And I kind of Lisa, taught me about finish lines, not finished times, right? So I didn't worry about that. In fact, I felt that was an opportunity to say thank you to our service people and people that the police officers. So I would zigzag. Rob, you had to enjoy it. I would zigzag and I would go up to an officer like you, Rob, and I'd say, thank you for your service. And they were startled, a lot of them, but that's kind of it became a way to go about do that. Well, Lisa and I had a great relationship early in my running career. I told you why, in teaching me this method. And she also, had a great boyfriend, and they decided that. Well, I asked them. I said, "Hey, listen, to celebrate my heart attack, I learned that Phoenix has a children's museum connected to the American Heart Association." I said, so I'm going to start where I had the heart attack in the parking lot of Orange Theory Fitness, and we're going to run to the Phoenix, American Heart Association. Dude, it was an ultra. It was over 26 miles. As Lisa would say, and she said on the video after the interview, because they had a nice crowd for me, coming into the scenario, and we did a fundraiser and stuff. But it was more for purpose to explain to people, again, it's never too late. And oh, by the way, here's a guy that a year ago had a heart attack that is now running over 26 miles to show, gratitude. I live in gratitude. And at the same time, get people realizing, what the opportunities are as you get through every day. So in saying that, I try to tell people, Rob, that, and Bob Bodine shared this with me, in my talks, because I like to not only promote my book here, but I also like to promote the fact that I'm a motivational speaker. And in being a motivational speaker, I believe it's a lot about what the audience wants to hear. Like I called you yesterday and I said, hey, what can we do to help your audience?
Hmm.
I'm not a scientific guy like you've had some great guests talking about stress and anxiety and different things like that. And, but point I'm making is in my particular case, I say to people, how many of you have seen a miracle? Think about it. In my particular case, I lost over 199 pounds. I survived sudden cardiac death. And more recently, I conquered cancer. I think I'm a miracle. But you know what? I think everyone in this room, everyone listening to Rob's podcast should know that you are a miracle waiting to unfold. And I saw this fun movie that Jim Carrey was in with Morgan Freeman, very good actors. And it was a fun movie. And Morgan Freeman is playing God. And he says, if you want to see a miracle, you got to be the miracle. And that's kind of the way I feel about what I say to people. So in that equation that you read in my book, it's on the footer on some of my chapters, there's this thing that says motivation, we talked about that, accountability, talked about that, and then sustainability. So if you really think about sustainability, I did that until I got cancer 18, 19 months ago, and in over 7 years. So if you're able to do those things, you're going to have a successful lifestyle. And that's kind of my mission here, to help people realize, to create a chain reaction of inspiration for others through lifestyle transformation, to run the race of your life, whatever that race is, through lifestyle transformation. So those are things that I talk about in my book, and I give examples of, as you know, and in reading the book and that type of thing. But I would tell you that the hardest thing recently, and thanks to my publisher, Kelly Cole, and his staff, Books for Athletes, that set this up, Rob, I'll tell you this. This is hard. It's hard because I don't look like the 199 guy right now. So I got COVID. I was doing an interview in 2000, I think it was 2021, soon to be 22. So I got COVID at the end. I had my shots and all that stuff, and I was scheduled to do a half marathon. My trainer at the time after Lisa was Adolfo Segarro. I loved him because we worked with the Florida Marlins together. He had a heart attack, and he went and ran the Houston Marathon. So, here's somebody that I could relate to, right, in our training. So, he had me doing things on a daily basis along with Orange Theory, stretching, which is so important, as you know, and all those things, foam rolling. And so as I'm getting through my process, and getting to, wanting to do more and be more, I get COVID. So I'm not going to be able to run a half marathon. So I convinced my Dr. Chopra, hey, if I'm okay by Saturday, 5 days, in quarantine, which wasn't easy, man. Right? If you know my way of being with people and talking, I love to be around people. Anyway, so I end up convincing him, and I ran a 5K. I hadn't trained at all that whole week. It was actually really cool because I was also into step goals. Like, I've motivated a lot of people to do this, but I wouldn't recommend it crazy. Like, I did 499 straight days of 12,500 steps. And sometimes during COVID, because I was tired of people saying, well, the gyms are closed. What do I do? Well, go out and do something. Keep moving, do something. And I felt like God had left me on this earth to motivate other people, because he didn't want me to go at that time, when I had that sudden cardiac death. So I get through that. That was worth about 20 pounds. So then November of 2022, that same year, actually, after I got COVID, I get that diagnosis that 1 in 6 males get, according to statistics. You have cancer. Think about that. Yeah, it's pretty powerful. And I ended up with, prostate cancer, and I don't know what to do. Again, fate comes to my life where all of a sudden I'm 64. February, I'm turned to 65. Guess what? I qualify for Medicare. A lot of us out there, we do things for other people. So I was working at the University of Miami a long time ago. We won national championships, that was cool, but in football and in baseball. And I'm saying, American football. Sorry, I know that I
No,
have to be.
I follow American football, so don't worry about that.
Okay. Yeah, the CFL. So, especially especially in Canada. And my point is that I end up, um, at a point, Rob, where I'm thinking, all right, man, what am I going to do here with with my life? You know what I mean? I mean, I got cancer. What am I going to do? So I done this favor for this guy where he brought a busload of people, and it wasn't like the digital age today. He forgot his tickets in Tampa, and I'm in Miami. That's not right around the corner. So I got one of my friends, Pam Young, to reprint the tickets. He remembered that. So I called up this another friend of mine, one of my corporate partners, and I said, Champ, hey, I live in Arizona. Do you know anybody that can get me in the Mayo Clinic? Because it's one of the best hospitals in the world, right? So he says, you did this favor for this guy that's on the foundation in the Sylvester Center in Tampa. He knew somebody, he made a phone call, and here I am in Mayo. So I go to Mayo, and this is originally, Rob, I was going to write 13 chapters in my book. Why? Because there's 13.1 miles and a half marathon, right? So I said, I'm going to delay my book. I want to write about this experience. So sure enough, I go into Dr. Agama in radiation oncology and I say, listen, the one thing I don't want to have happen, because I don't know enough about what we're getting ready to do, but I've decided to do radiation and I want to do proton pencil beam therapy. One of my friends, the head coach, retired at the University of Miami baseball, Jim Morris. He he said, I got this friend of mine that can really help you. And he sent me a book about how to beat prostate. So I started thinking, okay, can I remove it? Should I do the radiation? Was there chemo? What do I do? So I went with the radiation. Now, Coach Morris had over 30 treatments. Okay. I go in to see this Mayo doctor, and technology is better. Insurance companies are pushing for less spend, in one regard. And the guy looks at me and he says, "You're real healthy." I says, "Well, Dr. Agama, the one thing I don't want is weight gain. That's really important to me. I have this brand, I'm moving forward. I told you, part of my vulnerability is coming here on today because obviously I'm not, something happened, and it did." So he says, "Look, we're not going to do 30 treatments. We're going to do 5. And it's going to be because you're healthy and your numbers are great inside. You got 99 cholesterol. My tries are 40. My resting heart rate, I just looked at it last night, over the last 7 days, is 46. Okay. So I have obviously transformed the inner part of my body. But this cancer thing is not something that, just goes away. Right. So I do these 5 treatments at Mayo here in Arizona. And all of a sudden, side effects started happening. And I also had a hormonal shot. That's where I gained 50 pounds. And it was killing me, right? I'm on point. I'm following, I'm not doing over 2,000 calories a day. My macros are on point. What's going on? Well, unfortunately, to beat cancer, I had to have some issues with my hormonal shot that caused this issue, and my gut health was kind of messed up. And so I've been working really hard. I don't think I'm crazy. I'm not telling the public they should do it, but I show up every day at Orange Theory because I think you talked about this when you were talking about James Clear. You might want to share about that again, because I really like the segment of once you go to the gym, how it makes you feel.
Yeah, it's part of the book Atomic Habits that I did a little review of recently. It kind of talks about embodying the the lifestyle that you want to have. And the way one of the best ways to build habits is to build an identity first about yourself and then let the actions follow that identity. So what would a healthy, fit person do? And then you follow the steps that that person would do because that becomes your core identity.
So I'm going to add to that. In one of my chapters, okay, um, I say if you're Rembrandt the painter, what image would you create of yourself? Right? That's what I had to do. I had to see myself going from a 62 waist to a 38 waist. I had to see myself doing that. I had to see myself going from the concrete to the couch. I mean, the couch to the concrete. I had to see myself doing those things. So to be able to visualize what your goals are, I think are very, very important. And you don't have to be, again, another thing that there's a speaker, Dr. Rick, that I heard at a graduation, and he talks about who's the wisest person in your family, right? And you don't have to be like the smartest person. You just have to be able to understand what you put in your body is what you're going to get out of it. And eventually, if you stick with it, it's going to work. You're not going to listen. I was a miracle. I lost a lot of weight in a very short period of time. It's not what caused my heart attack. It was hereditary. If I didn't do what I did, Dr. Deeb, my cardiologist, said, if you didn't do what you did, you would not still be on this planet. So if you're out there saying, oh, he lost all this weight quickly, and no, that's not what happened. And the sustainability side of it after my accountability, like I mentioned earlier on, is really a value that I learned from other people. So Orange Theory helped me a lot because of the support and the community that it is. Just like I'm really fired up about being here with you because I want, if it's one person, you said this the other day, or if it's 100 people, if we create a chain reaction of inspiration for others about the value of lifestyle transformation, how many of you out there, listen, close your mind for a minute. I want to live a longer life. If suppose I told you you could do that if you read Never Too Late, because it will give you not only my story, but at the end, chapter 14 also became 99 secrets. So I like nines, right? A lot of things that I did along the way have been that way. Whenever I would run a race, in rock and roll, I would always try to get number 199, right? Or something that ended in 199. And I did most of the time and, put my 199 guy on there because I wanted people to ask me, what is that about? Why is it, when I met with Bob Bodine, I forgot to tell you this earlier, he wrote a second book talking about following God's plan, which is part of what I do. And let me do this now that we've gone through my story. If you're out there, think about this on a day-to-day basis. Start your day with a goal and a purpose. This is what I do, okay? Stay hydrated, okay? Incorporate mindful eating. Prioritize your physical activity. Put a focus on that. And by the way, back to incorporate mindful eating, so many people live to eat. No, eat to live. That is a big change. And the last one that I don't do as well as I could. And I think that's part of my issue right now that I'm learning. And one of your guests really was helpful when he talked about stress and anxiety, is get sleep. If you don't give back to your soul and to your body, I think that's part of the thing. But, in following God's plan, Bob Bodine said, I'm going to write a book that my mother told me every day, pull up a second chair in my bedroom, and I'm going to talk to God. And I'm going to ask him, 3 disruptive questions. I'm going to ask, and I did this, okay? I still do this, okay? Relative to a focus, which is, okay, does he know your situation? Of course he does. Number 2, is it too hard? Hello, who we're talking to, right? And does he have a plan? So it's like I told the Crazy Heart story, all these things, they all came to me in a moment of need, and I had to be there to say it was time. I had to know my wellness clock was ticking, okay? I had to know certain things that were occurring. So Bob pulls away from his country club and he's got a beautiful rag top. And by the way, he placed Deion Sanders, at the University of Colorado. He placed Scott Drew, the head coach at Baylor that won the NCAA basketball championship a few years ago. So Bob knows what he's talking about. So he's got on his the license plate, number two, chairs. What did I do when I came home? I went and got the 199 guy on my license plate, because you know what? Sometimes it's not just about you, it's about other people. And to me, I hope today's call, maybe I'll come back again. I'd love it, because you just have this vibe about you that I hope the listeners realize that, yeah, something we'd never met before, but what Kelly and Books for Athletes was trying to do is connect me with like people that have a common goal, and not just to talk about my book, but to give back to people, to realize the best time, you talked about this, the best time is to start now, right? You talked about this, right? And we've talked today about accountability, sustainability, and lifestyle. We talked about being a miracle, you being a miracle to unfold, okay? We talked about the importance, you talked about it, of doing hard things, right? You think it was easy to lose 199 pounds? No, it wasn't. You think it was easy to wake up in your bed and have sudden cardiac death? Oh, by the way, my physician, my primary, I love him, Dr. Chopra. He'll tell you the story. I was so focused on food that I wouldn't eat hospital food. I convinced Dr. Chopra that since I was still alive, I was still going to eat, the nutritional things, that I wasn't going to have too much sugar. I wasn't going to have high carbohydrates. I wasn't going to have things that I knew were not positive for me. So when you get into this, the big thing that I'm focused on moving forward is fan food is not fuel food. So let's think about that. For those of you that are working events out there, or you're in sports, think about what your owners asked you to do. Think about what your event asked you to do. You sit there and you work long hours, and you sit at your desk, and what do you eat? What's in the venue? You can't leave. Pizza, hot dogs, hamburgers, chicken fingers, French fries, okay, soda. Are those healthy things, Rob?
Not at
Would
all.
you eat any of those things if you were training for a half marathon? Heck no.
Absolutely not.
Now, and by the way, I heard you talk about this also in one of your other podcasts. You said something to the effect about, you treat your body, right? So some people call it cheat meals. Nah. It's a treat meal. You're treating yourself, but you have to do it within moderation, back to the beginning, because if you do that, you're able to be sustainable, because again, back to focus, you want to be accountable. So I have a awesome strategist for those that have got intrigued by this conversation. Maybe I'm going to lose 10 pounds. Am I going to start now? Am I going to run a half marathon? Am I going to go play basketball at the local Y? Whatever it may be. So my strategist, Alex Vergara, he worked at Disney. You've heard of Disney, Worldwide of Sports. He was one of the original people that put it together. He's an amazing strategist, amazing person. So I go to see him in Orlando, excuse me, and he says, I want you to put on paper a list of words that mean something to you. So a lot of my chapters in Never Too Late relate to these words that we embellish, wisdom, eat to live versus live to eat, or all these different things. Hearing versus listening, all these various things. So we developed, as we come to an end here, the 199 guy lifestyle, where the letters of lifestyle spell the success of your journey. I will tell you that when you ran the half marathon, I saw that second picture on Instagram That's what this is about. That's what this is about. It's about understanding that the L stands for learn, the I stands for inspire, the F stands for focus. Time to focus on what you want to do when you go in that gym. E stands for more energy for your life, for your family, for your career. Think about it. What's more important than that? You have the first four. You have the S in lifestyle now, another S. What does it stand for? Staying power. How many of you then were a part of a team? And what did that team coach say? Trust the process. You talked about that when you were talking about James Clear and about working out. You have a process, you stick to it. Then the why. If you're out there listening, this is your journey, not my journey. I told you about my journey, but I want this to become your journey. Why? Because you do it for the people that love you, that you love. The L. And finally, the last one that I learned on that pivot point day was, and I started learning, is the equation. It's the E is a double whammy. 20% is exercise and 80% is eat right. That's the lifestyle scenario that exists. And I've learned, as I mentioned early in this podcast, that this also comes to an evolution of the four pillars of life in my terms, okay? And I call those CEO cornerstones. Think about it, okay? And yeah, I'm giving you a lot of material here, and it's in my book. And my book is not a hard read because it's intended to be a self-help book to help people realize it's never too late. You can do it. You can do it, okay? And it starts with your attitude. And attitude is like a flat tire. If you don't fix it, you don't go very far. I had a flat tire and I fixed it. I encourage other people to do the same. And also to realize that these four pillars that I'm mentioning, CEO of your life. So if you're 20 years old out there listening to Rob's podcast, this relates to you because you're first getting started in your career. And maybe you were an athlete. Again, I have another talk that we can do another time. But, when we talk about your wellness clock, how your foundation was set up for failure, or if you're a student athlete, where do you go work out? Because I have my first job, right? I got to get going. So then I'm the CEO of my community. I want to get into the community. I don't have a big family. Maybe I just got married. Maybe I didn't. Doesn't matter. Okay. Point is that you need to do something to establish your roots at church or wherever it may be, synagogue, whatever it may be. And then finally, the next two, you're the CEO of your legacy. So I mentioned during one of our pre-talks, we talked about Alchemist, the book, big time book, okay, for me, because I learned two words, personal legend. We seek that. You seek that. Like you were saying, you transition, you're now working with YouTube, and then you get into this health thing and then you decide to do this podcast. Thank God you did. I'm appreciative for the opportunity. But the bigger picture is you're the CEO of your legacy, okay? Because you want to help others find theirs. And then finally, with two kids, I know you can relate to this, you're the CEO of your family. Why are you doing this? Okay? Because the most important thing that you could do as a parent out there, yeah, you spend time with your kids. Yeah, you discipline your kids. But you know what? At the end of the day, and because there's evolution to that, when they get older. But the bigger picture is that the biggest thing that you do as a parent is sacrifice. Sacrificing so your kids can be a better echo of you.
Neal, thank you so much for sharing your story. Your energy is infectious, and there's so much value in the messages that you're sending to people. I It's impacted me in ways that I didn't expect. And I'm
Thank you.
just so grateful.
Well, I'm grateful, for the opportunity to at least let people see this. It's on Amazon. Um, if you mention Rob and you write me on my website, the199guy.com, I'll sign it. And I'm one of those people that just doesn't sign my name. I want people to realize the value of what they've invested in for themselves.
I will be sure to include a link to your book in the description for this video, as well as your website and all of your socials where people can reach you. So everybody, I really encourage you to check out Neal's book. It's a great read. I read it myself very quickly, and it's packed with information. And just the story is incredible. You've dealt with more adversity and accomplished more over the last 10 years than I think most people do in their entire lives, and that is just remarkable. So again, I can't express enough gratitude for having this conversation with me, and I'd love to do it again sometime.
Well, we will. And for those in closing, from my end, I would say that this is a story of going from adversity to triumph. And I'm so thankful for it.
Amazing. Stay well, Neal. Until next time.
All right, everybody out there, happy Thanksgiving. A little
Yes.
early, right?
Happy Thanksgiving indeed.
All right. Don't eat too much, though.
That's right.
Not too much stuffing. A lot of carbs in stuffing, right? All right. Go
Absolutely.
get them. All right. Be well. Appreciate everybody.